This is Beer in Front, part of the Beer Media Group. Every week I'll talk to people in and around the beer world and get their stories all about beer. That's Beer in Front, and it's coming up now. Welcome to episode 252 of Beer in Front. I'm your host, Dave Zalatoris. Beer in Front is a charter member of the Beer Media Group. This week, it's Easter Sunday, and it's also 420. Who came up with that plan? But it's 420, and if you partake, I have a good guest for you this week. I'm talking to Karl Rutherford over at Twisted Hippo. They have a new line out of THC seltzers called Shine On, and I've heard some good things about them. I have a friend of mine that's going to do a review a little bit later on in the show, so stay tuned for that. I do want to be upfront with everyone. I cannot partake in the THC beverages. I am subject to random testing at work, and while it would take a long way for them to get to me, I'm not going to sacrifice a 38-year pension to drink a water. So I have people that consume them. They get back to me on it, but personally, I cannot. So I just wanted to be upfront with people. But these THC beverages, I mean, they're going like wildfire. You know, when I did that Beer and Terror show with Rod J last month, I talked to Eric over at Bottles and Cans, and he was mentioning they expanded their aisle of the THC beverages a couple times in just the last 6 months because there's such a demand for them. Every state is different. I know some states you could get them, some states you can't. Here in Illinois, a lot of breweries are starting to make THC beverages, and good for them. That's just another revenue producer. So, you know, hopefully more get on board with this. And, you know, if craft beer and the numbers start to decline, hopefully this will pick up some of the slack. But I've heard some good things about them. All of them are a little different, and you'll hear some of this in the interview with Karl, but some are like low dose with 2 to 3 milligrams of THC up to 10 milligrams of THC, depending on where you want to get to for the day. So there's a lot of variety that's out there depending on your needs. And just be careful because all of these are made with hemp, and they're legal because of the farm bill that passed, I think, 2018, 2019. But technically they're legal because it's hemp THC and not like from marijuana. But if you're like me and you're subject to random testing, it's still going to come up as a positive. So just be careful out there, know your own situation. Don't get into trouble. Don't say, hey, this jackass Dave over at Beer in Front said, it's hemp and it's legal. Do your own, know your own job situation. Don't get yourself in trouble. I mentioned on last week's show, I'm starting a new series on beer and food pairings. Well, so far it's coming along nicely. This week, I'm talking to someone over at Half Acre. We're going to get down with gumbo and a double hazy IPA. I have a couple other breweries that are on board working out just scheduling details, but got some places here in Chicago, got some places around the country. I've got some feelers out, but got a couple people that have signed on for this. It's looking really good. So what I'm planning on doing with this, it's not going to be every week. Maybe the weeks that, I don't have a guest or I don't have an interview lined up, I'll, plug this in there. Each week, I'm going to provide a recipe, and some places are going to, give a recipe that I'll give them credit for. I'll include like a link in the show notes where you could download a PDF of this for you to make this dish at home and pair it with that style of beer. So that should be pretty cool. And then probably at the end of the series, I'll just put everything in a PDF where you could download it all and just get like a little recipe book for stuff that you could pair with your favorite style of beer. But I'm really excited about this. I've got a couple mentioned last week, so I'm like, low-hanging fruit that I could handle, like brats in beer. Maybe I'll do a good burger in beer because I do have a good burger seasoning that is top notch. So I might have to provide that if you twist my arm a bit and pair it with a good beer. But all of these are going to be, not everyone I know is able to get, that brewery's beer depending on where you are. So I want to do it more by style. So if you are out of the country and you can't get, say, a half-acre beer, you still know that style where you could drink a local beer of that style and make this recipe for yourself and enjoy the food and beer pairing. So super excited about that. I'm going to have the half-acre one coming out real soon in the next week or so. Illinois Craft Beer Week is coming up. I talked to Ray Stout from the Illinois Craft Brewers Guild. We're going to talk all about Illinois Craft Beer Week, Beer Under Glass that's coming up. That'll be coming up in the next week or so, right before Illinois Craft Beer Week. I'm going to Toronto. My wife and I, we're going to go to Toronto for a couple days, so that should be cool. So hopefully I could meet up with some Toronto beer people, have some drink Canadian beer. I don't know. See, they don't like Americans now. They don't want to be the 51st state. Who would? But I'm going to have to go incognito. I don't want to look like an American. I don't want to go in cargo shorts and stuff like that. So I have a Maple Leafs hat coming my way. So I'm going to blend in. I'm going to look like a local. I don't want people to think I'm an ugly American. I don't want them to throw, Moosehead at me or anything like that. So Toronto should be good. That's going to be coming up next month. Hopefully I'll get to have some good Canadian beers. This intro is 7 minutes long. I've never had a 7-minute long intro. I'm just going to shut up. Let's get on with the show and let's talk about some Twisted Hippo and Shine On. In beer and beverage news, Goose Island is having Stout Fest on the 26th over at the Salt Shed. You got to check that out. I think the tickets are about $60. You get a glass, you get some good pours, donuts, everything. Good list of breweries that are going to participate. You have Goose Island, Guinness, Half Acre, Hopewell, Horse Thief Hollow, plenty more. So if you're in the Chicagoland area on the 26th, you got to check out Stout Fest from Goose Island. All right, this looks really cool. It's already sold out, so you can't buy it. But check out Miller High Life's Instagram feed. Last week, they put out a vinyl album, and inside the layers of the vinyl was beer. So it looked really cool. I don't know how long this is going to hold out. Don't know the music that's involved in it, but it just looks so flippin' cool. So check out Miller High Life's Instagram feed. I don't know if they're going to put them back out again. I mean, this sold out in a minute. So check them out. But if you like vinyl and you like the High Life, you got to check that out. They put this out a year or so ago, but Victory is bringing back pretzel beer. This is a toasted strong ale with sea salt, 7.5%. According to the press release, it's going to deliver notes of warm, freshly baked pretzels. I'm a fan. I'm going to need this for my beer and food series. But if you're in the Victory area, got to check out pretzel beer. Firestone Walker's coming out with a Chilada salted lime chili beer. This is part of their 805 series. That's going to be coming out soon. It's going to be in the giant 24-ounce can. So it's got tomato, lime, spices. You got to check it out. I'm assuming this is going to be available all around. But if you're a fan of that style, look for 805s. New Holland's Dragon's Milk line is collaborating with Dungeons and Dragons. They're going to have a coconut rum barrel reserve. This sounds intriguing. I'm a big rum fan. I like coconut. It's going to be around in 12-ounce cans, and it's going to be about 11% alcohol. So if you're a fan of Dragon's Milk, keep an eye out for their collaboration with Dungeons and Dragons. Sierra Nevada is revamping their Big Little Thing IPA They're reformulating it. It's going to be a hazy, juicy IPA, going to be up to 9.5%. It's been a top 30 brand, but I guess the trend has been moving down for the last couple of years. So they're reformulating it. They're going to put it out in new cans, a new color. So check out Hazy Big Little Thing Imperial IPA from Sierra Nevada. Twisted Hippo has been embracing their strange and putting out some great craft beer in Illinois for quite a while now. You could visit them in Chicago and Wheeling at District Brew Yards and pick them up at finer bottle shops and liquor stores around Illinois. 420 is right around the corner, and they have a new THC beverage line called Shine On that has been getting fantastic reviews from friends of mine who have tried it. I'm talking today to Karl Rutherford. He's the co-founder of Twisted Hippo. Karl, I appreciate you taking time out today to talk, sir.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
How has the Shine On line been selling so far?
It's we're moving more and more product all the time, which is good. Right now we're really just trying to build awareness and let people try it. And I think once people do, they really embrace it and enjoy it. So that's really what we're trying to focus on right now.
Nice how you tied in the word embrace, like from embrace your strange.
Yeah,
You don't have
absolutely.
the pink Zubas on, do you, by chance?
No, I don't actually. No, I
Uh,
wasn't able to find any. I thought I might have some in the back of the closet, but didn't find any.
if you're familiar, if you were at their location on Montrose, everyone had the pink and what were they, pink and black
Yeah,
Zubas
pink,
pants?
black, and gray. They were
Yeah.
they were like pink camo.
Yeah.
Yeah, we that was part of the uniform when we first launched. Those went away. I don't know. I'd say within the first 9 months to a year.
Yeah, no one wanted to be wearing those in Chicago winters going into work.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it hasn't been an easy 5 years for Twisted Hippo. How have you and your wife Marilee been doing with all of this chaos from COVID to the location to everything?
Yeah, I mean I will say, yeah, it was rough. We opened up at the brew pub. We had about a year over there, pre-COVID, which was was going pretty well. And then, COVID struck, and we had probably 8 different business models over the course of, a roughly 2-year period. And then we were to a point where we were like, okay, maybe things are starting to look up. We had a really nice weekend, better numbers than we had in a long time, and then the fire struck on a Monday morning and kind of decimated that. But, thankfully, our friends over at District Brew Yards reached out and said, hey, let's talk. And they were opening a second facility, and shortly thereafter ended up having an opening in Chicago. So it was great to be able to, get back on our feet with beer, and get beer back out on the market within about 6 months after the fire. The harder part of it's been, that was another model change. We had to, go from, almost selling everything exclusively out of our own doors over at the brew pub to, having to have some wider distribution, which in today's beer market is a challenge, and especially when you're, you haven't had a lot of distribution. Trying to go in and win that shelf space when it's, getting smaller and smaller and harder is definitely a challenge.
I'm glad that you guys have rebounded. I think I mentioned on the show a while back, before I even started this, your wife, Marilee, she didn't know me from Adam. My wife and I, before Burning Bush opened, you were the
Mm-hmm.
closest brewery to where I live at. So my
Mm-hmm.
wife would pop in from time to time. And, your wife, you don't know me from Adam. And I happened to go in on, it wasn't my bachelor party, but my friends, took me out to do breweries of the neighborhood. And your wife heard this and hooked us all up with the shot of Malort. And I don't think my suburban friends forgave her for that to initiate them in the Malort world. But I mean, you are great people, and I'm really happy to see that, you guys have rebounded. I mean, you were talking, better than most brewery owners about being able to pivot. Was this THC Shine On line something you even imagined when marijuana was legalized here in Illinois in 2020?
Not at first. We were hearing a little bit about it in some other states and things like that. It really didn't kind of, become an idea until, the Craft Brewers Guild, which I'm a board member of, the Illinois Craft Brewers Guild, was approached by the Hemp Beverage Association, and they wanted to, talk about synergies and the way we might work together, and that, in other states they were seeing a lot of breweries who were, bringing these products into their portfolios and, having some success and, some of them even so much as, moving a lot of their production over to that side. And it was helping out with breweries who were struggling a little bit. So, it became a thing to definitely think about. But at the same time, we over at the Brew Pub, we had always been about making sure we had something for everybody. That was one of the big things for us. When somebody walked through the door, even if they weren't a beer person, we wanted them to feel comfortable. A lot of breweries suffer from that thing. If you got a group of people and a couple of them are beer people, you walk in, maybe you have a few, and then they're like, "Hey, let's go somewhere else. There's not really much for me." So we wanted to make sure that we had things that people who weren't beer people would enjoy, including non-alcoholic options. And for me, these beverages are another way for somebody to have something, that is a social drink that does get them a little bit altered, but and has similar effects to alcohol, but isn't alcohol.
Now, there's four great flavors from Shine On. You have blackberry basil, watermelon mint, cherry ginger, and a blood orange bitters. They're all low calorie, gluten free, vegan. And from my buddy, this gets you to where you want to be with 10 milligrams of Delta 9 THC and 10 milligrams of CBD. From my friends, they all tell me the one thing, because I've given them this couple, let me know what you think of this. And they've all said to me, these taste great. And they're not artificial tasting like some other products that are out there. That's the one thing that friends of mine said, I kind of like them. I like the idea, but some of them just taste like fake, like you're drinking some fake carbonated water. So they've all really liked the flavor profiles you've been putting out.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that was one of our considerations. I did a lot of market research, tried most of the ones I could get my hands on at the time. And yeah, a lot of them, have that really artificial sweetener taste to them. And then you look at the labels and a lot of them are, they're just carbonated water and artificial sweetener and flavorings. So, it was important to me to do something that really had great flavor, and, natural ingredients and, was something that, people would want to taste and doesn't have that chemical taste. I'm really personally susceptible to it. Like if something's got one of those artificial sweeteners, it turns me off. So I wanted to make sure that we were making something that, tasted good and, had good ingredients. So yeah, they're low calorie, but not no calorie, because they're, they are derived from real fruit, which is also nice. We really wanted to go for that sort of, it's not drinking a thing of fruit juice, but you definitely know the flavor is there, complemented by some nice botanicals in each of the flavors.
Like when coming up with the formula and the recipes, what didn't make the cut? Were there some that, just didn't make it?
Yeah, I mean, originally, the watermelon basil was going to be a strawberry basil, and we just could not get the strawberry to taste quite right. Strawberry, we make a strawberry beer as well, and it is a delicate flavor, and it's a flavor that doesn't necessarily act the way you think it's going to act. Strawberry candy is not the same thing as real strawberries, and and we found that with a lot of different fruits, but strawberry is a particularly tricky one.
The strawberry beer is outstanding. So
thank you.
I will definitely vouch for that one.
Yeah. So I hadn't quite cracked the code on how to do it for Shine On. I was mulling over it the other day, and I think I might have another way to take an attack at it. But I haven't had a chance to do any bench testing with that. So, we'll see. Right now I'm, trying to focus on those four core flavors and keep those, rolling and see where those go. And, eventually some of them may get swapped out, or we may introduce, other flavors as well, depending on how things go out in the market.
From what I've seen, just looking around, THC beverages, they vary between 3 and 10 milligrams of THC. What was the thinking behind going big on the Shine On line?
So, one of the reasons we went with 10 milligrams per can is, just looking at what was out there. There were a lot of, 2.5 threes and some fives and a few tens and then some crazy, stuff that's much, much higher than that. But, 10 is sort of for me that sweet spot where it's going to work, but it's still not too much to make the experience, unpleasant for somebody trying it. Maybe if you're, trying for the first time, you might want to do half a can and kind of see where that takes you, and then, maybe do the other half if you're feeling good about it. But the 10 is kind of the sweet spot is what we found. And when you're looking at sort of price point per unit and those kinds of things, the 10 is kind of the bang for your buck thing. A lot of people with the 2.5s or 5s, what we were hearing was, I'll drink 2 or 3 of them, as opposed to, being able to drink one and knowing that this is the effect you want it to have.
Now, from where I work, technically cannot I'm subject to random testing. Now, all of your products, they're made from hemp, which is legal. But if somebody like who's not familiar with THC beverages if they were tested, would they fail
Mhm.
with this, or how does that
Yes, I
work? 'Cause it's
mean,
kind of a
yeah, it would.
weird gray area.
Yeah, it would show up, as a cannabis, result on a drug test, unfortunately, which I don't necessarily understand, and there probably will be changes coming down the pike. If the substances are legal, then how are we able to do tests? And I mean, obviously, you don't want anybody altered at work. But these things we know from science, they stick around in your body, they're residually there. So it's not necessarily like if you went in on Monday and were tested that you had consumed it within the last, point of time where it would have any effect on you. It's just residual in your body. So hopefully, things will get adjusted and people will understand that, kind of the same thing, with alcohol. These things, the effects on you, physically are last a short amount of time. And as long as you're not actually actively in the altered state, I don't feel like that should be a thing that people cannot participate in.
Yeah. I mean, my line of thinking and what do I know is like, you know, you would probably be far worse at work coming in like hungover after having
Oh
a
yeah.
couple barrel aged stouts the night before than I would be if I had one of your products.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as somebody who makes beer, I understand that well. Hangovers don't get easier as you get older. That's for sure. So it is nice to have a product like that, where yeah, like you can have a few and be altered the night before, the next morning, wake up and not have that hungover, groggy feeling, and be able to go about and move on with your day.
Now, you mentioned the Illinois Craft Brewers Guild. Last
Mm-hmm.
month, they had the Hemp Beverage Brew Day where we were chatting. You were part
Mm-hmm.
of a collaboration effort making, if I remember right, it was a gin inspired beverage. How is
Yes,
that coming
yes.
along?
It's coming along nicely. We did send it out for testing, and it came back a little high. So we did a second round of tests, and we're waiting on the results from that. So once we hear whether or not we're in spec, then we'll release it, and if not, then we'll make adjustments to get it in spec, because that's one of the things we want to make sure that we're doing. On our cans it says 10 milligrams plus or minus 10%. So it's got to be 9 to 11 on those substances. We want to make sure that what we're giving to people is what we're actually say is on the label. So that is a very important part. The emulsions that we use are tested before they get to us, so we know the concentrations and we know the strengths, and we can calculate the inclusion rates. And then we do testing on the final product as well to make sure that what we're saying is on that can is what is in the can. And those results are available on our website so that people can go and look at them and make sure that they know that what we're giving them is on the up and up.
Yeah, and that was the one thing that really impressed me about that conference. And I forget if it was Ray Stout that was mentioning it or another speaker. I apologize, but just how strict everybody is in Illinois, at least when they're putting
Mm-hmm.
these beverages out. It's everything is followed to the letter. There's
Mm-hmm.
no guessing. You know exactly what you get. You could go online, like you mentioned, and see exactly what's in this, the percentage, all of that. So that's one thing that struck me from that conference last month.
Absolutely. No, I mean, all of the people that I know that are making these, we're very conscientious about that. We want to make sure that what we're putting out is what we say we're putting out, that we're hitting those, marks that we say we're hitting, and that we're transparent with the people that are consuming it, so they know exactly what they're getting, when they drink that can.
Where can people, like outside of district brew yards, where could people buy Shine On and Twisted Hippo?
So, Twisted Hippo is available, at brew yards, like you said, but also, other bottle shops and liquor stores and stuff. We don't have huge distribution, but it's definitely out there. And then, the Shine On, we've really focused on kind of the smaller bottle shops, people that we like to work with. We've got some over at, Bitter Pops and Bottles and Cans and Pelly's Liquors and places like that, have brought in Shine On. And then, the easiest way to make sure that you can always get all of the current flavors is to just order it direct from us. It's one of the advantages of this product, is that we can, legally ship it to your door, which we cannot do with beer, which is just frustrating, and is something
that's another episode in itself.
That might be a whole series of episodes. That's a whole thing. People want it. We want it, but there's a lot of opponents and a lot of, hurdles that we would have to clear to be able to do that. But thankfully, at least for right now, the regulations might change, but right now we can send this direct to you. So if you go to, drinkshineon.com, you can order directly there, have it sent to your door. We do, free shipping on larger orders. We do, case discounts and all that kind of stuff. So, that's probably the best way to make sure that you're getting whatever, current flavors we have available at any given time. Because, even retailers won't necessarily carry all four, or,
Well, I think Bottles and Cans does, because I was over there not that long ago. But if somebody doesn't live in the Chicagoland area, are you able to ship Shine On to all 50 states, or does it vary by state legality?
It varies by state legality. There are some states that don't allow it. I believe, I think it's 5 or 6. And the website's all set up. If you live in one of those states and you try to order, it's not going to let you. You won't be able to. We won't be able to send it to you, unfortunately. But it very much is a state by state sort of thing. Right now there's a lot of discussion around it, legislatively, what it's going to look like in Illinois, what the regulations are going to be, and to be clear, we want regulations. Being a responsible beer operator, we want to make sure that these things are not getting in the hands where they're not supposed to, and people are being responsible with them, and retailers are being responsible and selling them to the appropriate audiences. So there are other things that are, trying to be legislated that we think, may go too far. So we're trying to hash all that out and figure out what the landscape is going to look like. But, regulate us, tax us, help the state out. We're happy to do that.
Yeah. I was talking to Ray last year. We were kind of touching on this, and, liquor stores, bottle shops, they're the perfect place to sell products like this. One, you have to be 21, so they already are carding people that look underage. It's not like this is going to be like goofy seltzers where you have a hard version of a seltzer close to a non-alcoholic version. So, I mean, the model is perfect in liquor stores, bottle shops, places like that.
Absolutely.
Are there any future plans for Twisted Hippo, Shine On, that you'd like to share?
We would love to eventually get back into our own space. We miss our brew pub dearly. Brew yards is wonderful, but it's a different experience. When people walk in, you get that key card that looks like a hotel card, and you pour your own beer. You don't have a bartender. You don't have anybody sort of, helping guide you, with the beer. There were some beers over at, at the brew pub that, might be a little challenging, might be a little, slower moving. And, having a bartender that could say, hey, you know what, I want to give you a little sample of this, was a way that we could open up people's minds and help people learn about some things. When you're left to your own devices, sometimes you don't necessarily be as adventurous as you would think. A place like that where the idea is to try things. We've seen where some people, certain types of beer still just don't just don't move. People just they see the name or the description and they're like, yeah, I'm not gonna even try it. So it's interesting. So yeah, we want to get back to having our own space. We built a nice community. We had lots of regulars that we miss, lots of events and things like that it would be great to get back to. That was one of our goals from the beginning, was to build a community hub, and we did it. The fire gave us a little bit of perspective to look back and say, hey, we accomplished this thing that we set out to accomplish. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, far too short of a lifespan there on Montrose. Well,
Yeah.
Karl, I thank you so much for coming on, talking
Of
about
course.
Shine
Happy to.
On. You could pick them up everywhere. Like we mentioned, you can get them online. You could go to your finer bottle shops in the area, pick it up. They have 4 flavors. Do you think that down the road you might do like a variety pack, or is it still just going to be in the 4-packs for now?
Oh, actually, yeah, we have variety packs currently available on the website as of last week. So, yeah, we we have a 4-pack with one of each, and you can also buy a mixed case of those as well, so that you get a chance to try all the flavors at once. That was one of the things that people were like, yeah, I'd love to be able to, sample, one of each and pick my favorite. So this gives them an opportunity to do that.
So definitely you got to check them out. They have 2 locations, District Brew Yards. One in Chicago is on Ashland, not that far from the United Center, and the other one's in Wheeling on Milwaukee Avenue. You could also hit them up over at Beer Under Glass next month. So Karl, I'm sure I will see you there at Beer Under Glass, and best of luck with all your future plans, sir.
Thanks, Dave. I really appreciate it.
Welcome to a Beer in Front THC beverage review. I'm Dave's weed correspondent, Peggy, and today I'm going to try one from Shine On. This seltzer is watermelon mint and has 10 milligrams of THC. Shine On is made by Twisted Hippo, and they have a few different flavors to try. Without further ado, let's open this and try it. I like the aroma. Doesn't smell dank like some out there. I'm getting faint notes of the mint and watermelon. The taste is great. The flavors are subtle and don't taste fake at all. I'm getting a natural melon taste with the mint bringing up the rear. On days where the 10 milligram will come in handy, I'll definitely grab this one again. Put it in the cart.
Thanks, Peggy, for that review of Shine On. I'm going to have a beer from Twisted Hippo right now. This is their Puffy Parka. It's a dark lager, 4.7% alcohol. It's finally warming up in Chicago. It's time to put away the parkas. So I'm going to have one last Puffy Parka of the season. Very foamy, well carbonated here. Smells good. I do love a good dark lager. This smells really good. I'm going to let the foam die down a little bit before I grab a sip. But reading from the can, this has German malt and Czech hops to make a beer that's just right for a cold winter night. So that's good. Low ABV on this, so you could have a couple of these. All right, let's give it a taste. That's really good. I love dark lagers. Just so good. It's got some bitterness from the dark malts that I'm getting here. I think it tastes really good. I'm a big fan of these. Yeah, no, I'm digging that a lot. Nice malt flavor here. Get the little bitterness in the back. I'm a fan of this. If you see anything from Twisted Hippo or Shine On, if that's what you prefer, you got to put them in the cart. They're really good. You could pick it up at District Brew Yards. They have 2 locations, one in the city, one in Wheeling. You could also pick it up at your fine bottle shops around the Chicagoland area. So if you see anything from Twisted Hippo, like this Puffy Parka, you know what to do. Put it in the cart. All right, that's going to wrap things up for this edition of Beer in Front. I thank you very much for listening. If you'd like to reach out to me, email me, Dave at Beer in Front, or you could support this show over on patreon.com/beerinfront. Big thanks to Karl Rutherford over at Twisted Hippo and Shine On for coming on and talking about that. Thanks to my friend Peggy for reviewing it for me. Big ups to Peggy. Have a great week, everyone. Have a great Easter. Have a great 420. I'll talk to you next week. And remember, sometimes the beer in front of you is the best one yet.